Hi everyone, welcome to another video. For those who are new to my channel, my name is Ariana and I am currently a grad student in a school psychology program in California. In today's video, I am going to be sharing with you guys my top 3 current favorite podcasts that I listen to. I listen to these on my way to work and on my way to school, and I find them to be very useful and informative, so I thought it would be good to share with you guys in case you're looking for new podcasts to listen to. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with my number 3 favorite podcast, and that is the NPR Hidden Brain. And this podcast is hosted by Shankar. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And the podcast focuses on the unconscious patterns that drive our behavior. So, why we make choices, relationships, things like that. It's a little different because in the podcast, it's told like in a story type kind of way. And so it starts off like with a little story and it sets the theme for that podcast. And then they have like a guest person talk, about why we do what we do or why we are behaving in a certain way. I don't know if that makes any sense. But for example, the last one that I heard was about why we're creatures of habit. And so it starts off with a story of somebody that is doing something, obviously that is a habit. And then they have like the guest speaker, come in and kind of explain why we have habits and all of that type of stuff. And so anyways, it does give good information and it makes you think like, why do we behave the way that we do? And then, anyways, I recommend it. My number 2 favorite podcast is School Psyched podcast. And this podcast is actually hosted by 3 school psychologists, and they bring in guest speakers to discuss different topics about school psychology. And I really enjoy listening to this podcast because you get information from people who are already out in the field, and I just find it very interesting to kind of hear their perspectives and what's currently happening and how they do certain things or how they solve certain problems. And different topics are discussed in this podcast. So they have like special education legalities, assessments, self-care, early childhood. So there's a variety of topics, and I find them very useful and informative. They also have like this Google Drive that they share with other school psychs, and it has a lot of different resources you can use. I will go ahead and link that down below for you guys. I really do recommend this podcast. It's pretty up there with my number 1. So yes, that is School Psyched podcast. And my number 1 favorite podcast is The Mental Breakdown. And this podcast is hosted by Dr. Bernie Wilkinson and Dr. Richard Marshall. I absolutely love this podcast. I would recommend it 100%. So in this podcast, Dr. Bernie Wilkinson and Richard Marshall, they discuss different topics, again, relating to mental health. And so I find it very informative for me as a school psych student. And they discuss things like, ADHD, personality disorders, ODD, OCD, all kinds of stuff. And their podcast is very organized. They know what they're talking about. It's not boring. It's not too long or too short. It's great. So that is my number 1 favorite podcast. Again, my number 1, The Mental Breakdown. Number 2, School Psyched podcast. And number 3, NPR Hidden Brain. So I recommend these to you guys, especially if you're interested in mental health or pursuing school psychology. They're very useful and informative, like I said. If you do listen to them, please let me know down in the comments below. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.